Hey everyone, it is no secret that I do enjoy me these boxes, tin boxes from Make Playing Cards as deck storage. They are solid, right? They are going to hold a standard size deck perfectly. The lids are nice and secure, right? You can move that around all day and that lid is not going to pop off. They have an option where they can print directly on the tin itself, so it's not like a cheap sticker that'll eventually peel off. And they look great. So this is like my ideal of form meets function. And I have, over the last year or so, been kind of converting a lot of the decks that I use frequently that are in tuck boxes, or decks I have that don't have homes, or decks that I just use very, very frequently and need a sturdier storage for, to these tins. And I just recently got these four and am exceptionally pleased at how most of them came out. So I thought that what I'd do today is kind of like walk you through what I did to design all these different lids so that you can kind of get a sense of what I go through when I'm doing this. First off, let's just take a moment to talk about this CS Tarot deck box. As you saw a second ago, I have two. Back when Conrad first came out with this deck, I got a couple copies. I got the first edition in linen and the smooth cardstock that he had out at the time. This one is the linen. I've subsequently gone and given my smooth cardstock one to Brant over at Moon Baby. When I was getting these made, I noticed that they didn't come with a box, and that irritated me. I did go ahead and try to make up the tuck box from the file that Conrad had available, and it worked out pretty well, not gonna lie. But it fell apart pretty quickly because the way I did it, I took and just printed it on a standard sheet of paper and then glued that paper to cardstock. And when I tried to fold everything together, it just kind of like ripped a few things, and honestly, the box is not long for this world. So I went and had these tins made up, and I think I was the first person to ever do this for the CS Tarot. At the time, Conrad he didn't have any designs available to be used directly on these tins. So what I did was I took the file he'd made for the little cardboard tuck box, and I took this bit out of that file, and I think it's kind of hard to tell. I did skew and cut a little bit too much off on this border. This border is a little bit wider than this one, but you can barely tell. And all I did was center it on some black, and I thought it looked really sharp. A whole bunch of other people did too, and now Conrad has this available on his website for people to download. When I got my second CS Tarot with this last order, I wanted a box for it too, but I didn't want the two boxes to be identical. When I got this particular deck, I did choose to get the one with a black background. I actually do really like Conrad's yellow background. He actually took some amber and kind of caught its refraction pattern and kind of like blew it up into a rotationally symmetric card design. And I really like that story with the amber. Yellow isn't my favorite color, but I actually did really like those backs. With his second edition of these cards, he has come up with, I think, 3 different back designs. There's this black, a version of the yellow without the Pamela Coleman Smith signature on it, and an orange one, I believe. I think that's it. So when I got my second edition, I decided just to go with the black back, to just easily tell it apart from my first edition, but also because I think that this black really suits the deck nicely. I also did go with the plastic cardstock, if that makes any difference, and honestly, it's fantastic. I did go with the plastic cardstock because this deck is actually a primary reader for me. I have it out nearly every day, and I wanted something that I was going to be able to use for a good long time without worrying about it being destroyed. So that's why I went with this. As far as the tin goes, I did choose to basically take the border of this, or take this card, and just put the CS Tarot deck image on top of it. Now I can look at these two and immediately tell by first glance whether I'm looking at my first edition or my second edition. I think it worked out pretty well. I was hoping that there was going to be a little bit more blue coming in through this crackle, but as you can see, this little logo pretty much takes up everything that would be blue on this black card. But I think it looks great, so I'm not mad about that at all. So that was the first one I came up with. Next up, I've got my 1909 art restoration deck. And some people might have actually seen this tin design before. I know that Simon on the Hermit's Cave had asked me to make up one, and I whipped this out as fast as I could. And he got a copy well before I was able to get one of my own. But I had a lot of fun actually making up this particular one. Let me pull out some cards here. All right. So the actual 1909 art restoration just comes in this really boring tuck box. It's a maroon color because the decks were originally packaged in a little maroon box, right? But there's next to nothing on it other than this little 1909 logo there, and in very tiny print stuff about the deck in that corner. And that just, I wanted something more. The 1909 deck is notable because it is one of the only decks that is around with the roses and lilies. And let me walk that statement back. The actual roses and lilies deck, there's only like 5 of those in existence, and that's where this back comes from. This particular one is a touch-up of Saskia Jansen's copy. There are plenty of decks out on the market today that use this motif, but when we're talking about the actual roses and lilies deck, it's fairly rare. It's a thing. I wanted to be able to basically riff off of this really iconic design. So I took this card, blew it up a little bit, and I took these center 4 rows and more or less just covered them up with a plain maroon field to kind of honor the original box. In fact, I color matched it off of this box. I did have to do a little bit of tweaking. As you can see, like these borders here are a little bit larger. So I did have to kind of like do, a little bit of tomfoolery to kind of make it so that it wasn't going to be hyper obvious that I was basically adding some blue border here. I believe what I did was I kind of like took a section where there was a lot of blue. I think it was actually over here, and I kind of like tiled it out and kind of like did a few things to blend it. I could have done a better job blending on this border. You can see where the blue is a little bit darker, and let me actually bring that up. All right, you can see where you can see that edge there, right? But overall, it's not bad. Then what I did was I took this card where C in London had made that 1909 thing very, very nice and big. And I used Photoshop to basically snip this out of this particular card. Then I took out the background, this white background, and basically took one of these whiter creamy colors and filled that into the back so it would kind of like all have the same white-ish cream tone across the entire tin cover. And then I wasn't a huge fan of how tiny the 1909 art restoration deck like words were. So I did find a font that kind of had that like late Victorian, early, what are they, the Edwardians motif. And just kind of popped that on there, and I think it actually ended up looking quite nice when all was said and done. So that is what I did for my 1909 art restoration deck, and I think it turned out great. I definitely don't mind it, and it makes it very easy to tell this apart from like my Make a Playing Card Study deck, which is the Pam A. I think it's pretty great. Next up, we've got the tin I'm actually the most excited about. I think this one came out super well. Vintage Albano decks are pretty expensive, and this is not a deck that I really want like every single copy of like some collectors do. I was very lucky pretty early on to get this one, and it's practically pristine. The box is in great shape. It looks like it's been on a shelf for 50 years. And because of that, I felt really guilty about even like thinking about reading with it. Like, it's so perfect. I didn't want to destroy the perfection. A few weeks ago, I was able to find a copy of a vintage Albano that was being sold without a box. And I got it for like really cheap compared to what most vintage Albanos go for. They're at this point going over for $200 a deck, which is ridiculous. And I got this one for like $50. When it came, now the seller did swear up and down that it had every single card. That was a lie. I am missing the Six of Wands, so I do have to find a Six of Wands somewhere. But I'm actually quite liking this. It's not in pristine condition. It's a little bit, you know, it's edged in dirt. And you can see where it's gotten, you know, acid damage around the edges. All the centers are offset, which is just great. But it is actually a copy that I don't mind handling, so I'm very pleased that I got it. It didn't come in a box, like I said, so I knew that I was going to have to make a tin for it. And I wanted a tin that would look like the original box, but say Albano weight on it somewhere. When you're actually looking at the Albano box, it doesn't have Albano anywhere on the front cover. In fact, it doesn't really have Albano anywhere on it at all. Right? No Albano anywhere there. Tarot Productions Incorporated. The only place you see it is here. This Albano weight tarot deck is published by Tarot Productions Incorporated. That is the only place. What I did to kind of create this deck was I took the Sun card from this deck, because I hadn't gotten this one yet, and scanned it. And I did that instead of scanning the original box here, because I do have a little bit of schmutz here on this, like it's just a streak of ink. And I didn't want to recreate that. So I scanned my card and I took off the field here so I could get a lot more white space down the base. Then I scanned this instruction cover and used that big tarot right there. And the font for this instructions in Albano weight aren't exact, but it's close enough that it worked out. So I scanned this, snipped out the font, I guess, and did a couple color transformations to make it black and to kind of sharpen up edges. Laid it over the background, and then I took a scan of the back of this box and took this Albano weight, blew it up, made it about the same black as this, sharpened it up because, I mean, obviously that's kind of a big enlargement, and just nestled it right where that instructions would be. And I think that it ended up looking pretty sharp when all was said and done. The only other thing that I did was I wanted to make sure that there was some yellow on this. I didn't want just a field of white because Albano was the first person to come up with a yellow tuck box, and I wanted to be able to honor that. So I did have this little border here of yellow, and I think that overall that effect is really nice. So I was very pleased at how that one came out. Last up, I've got my Golden Rider, and I have to admit, I could have put a little bit more thought into this. I wanted it done really super fast, so I took my Albano file and basically just kept the border setup that I have here, and then put a new image in, made a new color for the border. And I think that if I had to do it again, I would not have had a secondary border on this. I think it just looks a little cheesy. And who knows, maybe someday I will do it again. I really wanted a tin for this because the box on my Golden Rider is appalling. It is being held together by packing tape and prayer, and I want to throw it away, but I did want a nice place to house my Golden Rider deck. I also did kind of want to keep this packing, more or less, that imagery, because this is, you know, the first way that this particular deck was marketed. And even though it's really like low tech and really kind of cheesy, I've become fond of it. Obviously I couldn't like scan this box because there's just so much packing tape, so much dirt, so much nastiness all over it. So what I did was I scanned my magician card, and that was a lot easier to use some Photoshop to edit out the few bits of damage that are on that, you know, like a little nick in the ink, a little schmutz of dirt, that type of thing. In the end, I did actually have to snip out this image altogether and replace the background because the background was just too variable to work with. It didn't look nice and clean. So I did have to snip all that. I was also not able to entirely match the font correctly. As you can see, this one's a little shorter and it's got like this little like serif on the eye, whereas this one doesn't have a serif. But overall it worked out pretty well. If I had to do this over again, like I said, I wouldn't have the gold border. I think that it came out looking a little too green and just kind of muddy. That would mean I would have to make this a little bit bigger and probably move this font down into that wand like it is over here. But I think that that could have worked out pretty well. So if I ever do it again, I'll probably change things around in that regard. And who knows, I might actually redo it because when this came to me, this one corner was a little chipped, which I don't know if you can see that there. You can probably see that better now. This is the first box I've ever gotten from Make Playing Cards where there was ever any damage to the box when I got it. And that is saying something because I think I've got like 20 of these boxes at this point. It's really sad. So yeah, that was my haul and what I did to make up all these boxes. If you've got any questions for me, or if you want me to make a box for you, or a design, let me know. Just send me a message and I'll see what I can do about that. Thank you so much and have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.